Hey guys, tonight we settle into the quiet, glowing world of matchstick factories during the Industrial Revolution. Imagine yourself stepping into a chilly, dimly lit factory somewhere in late 19th century England, the air thick with wood smoke and faint chemical odors. You trudge through rows of wooden benches where tiny hands, mostly girls barely into their teens, swiftly dip and dry countless slender sticks that will soon spark countless fires. You probably won't survive a day in this world without a cough or two, but here you are, ready to unwind with the gentle clatter of matchboxes and soft murmur of voices as your lullaby. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, why not drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is locally? It's always fun to picture the world turning while we relax together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The matchstick, simple and unassuming, became a symbol of domestic life, lighting fires for warmth, cooking, and candlelight. But behind this modest tool lies a story of booming industry, mostly powered by young women who became known simply as the matchstick girls. The Industrial Revolution's rapid urbanization created demand for cheap, quick-burning matches, sparking an explosion of factories dedicated to their production. Factories specializing in matches first took root in cities like London and Glasgow in the mid-1800s. The reason? Matches were easy to manufacture and sold widely, but the work was repetitive and required nimble fingers, making young women and girls prime laborers. These factories often grew up in cramped industrial neighborhoods, tucked between coal yards and railways, where the faint smell of pine and chemicals mingled in the air. At this time, factory owners were racing to supply matches to a growing middle class eager for convenience. While men dominated heavy industry, the delicate task of dipping tiny sticks into phosphorus and drying them fell to these girls, who often worked 12 hours or more each day. Historians still argue whether the choice to employ girls was purely economic or influenced by Victorian ideas about female dexterity and docility. One lesser-known fact: some match factories had small restrooms where the girls could briefly escape the noise, though these were often little more than corners with a bench. During breaks, workers would quietly share stories or hold hands to soothe the sting of chemical fumes lingering on their skin. The matchstick industry's early boom wasn't just about fire starting. It shaped entire neighborhoods, daily rhythms, and sadly set the stage for many health struggles that these girls endured silently. As your eyes grow heavier, picture the gentle glow of matches striking softly in the dark. Each tiny flame a testament to the lives that built this glowing industry, one stick at a time. You wake slowly to the muffled clatter of wooden sticks being dipped, dried, and boxed. The morning light peeks in through tall, grimy factory windows, dust motes drifting in slow, lazy spirals. You are one of the matchstick girls, a young worker with hands stained faintly yellow from the chemicals you've handled since you were barely old enough to count the days of the week. Your shift will stretch long, but the rhythm of your work is oddly soothing. Dip, dry, turn, pack. Your day begins before dawn. You dress quickly in simple cotton, a garment already worn thin. Walking the streets to the factory, the familiar smells of coal fires and damp cobblestones settle around you like a soft cloak. At the factory, the air is thick, a blend of pine, phosphorus, and the subtle bitterness of sweat. The noise is steady, soft wooden clicks, the rustling of papers, the occasional whispered conversation. The factory hums gently, and you fall into its pulse, your fingers moving almost automatically. Most matchstick girls are teenagers, some even younger. They come from nearby neighborhoods, homes, small and crowded, shared by many. You often exchange quiet greetings with your fellow workers, some friends from school, others new faces, all bound by the same routine. You might steal a glance at the factory foreman, a man in his 50s whose gruffness softens only when a girl coughs too hard. Historians still argue whether the presence of young girls in factories was an economic necessity or a reflection of societal views on women's roles. After all, these girls were expected to be gentle and obedient, traits that factory owners valued in workers who needed to follow repetitive instructions without fuss. Your tasks involve more than just dipping sticks in phosphorus. You polish, sort, pack, and sometimes fix mistakes left by tired hands. The factory is strict. Lateness or errors can cost you precious pennies. Wages are low, barely enough to support your family, but your income is vital, a quiet lifeline in a harsh world. Here's a quirky tidbit. To keep spirits up during long shifts, girls often hummed folk songs or shared whispered jokes about the peculiar shapes matches sometimes took: little trees, tiny swords, or matchstick armies that only they could see in the pile of sticks. Despite the hard work, there are moments of soft camaraderie. You and your friends pass notes, tell stories of future dreams, or sneak small treats from lunch pails. Outside, the city is loud and chaotic, but inside the factory walls, the routine creates a strange kind of calm, a predictable world in the ever-changing storm of industrial life. By the time the sun dips low, you trudge home, fingers stiff and skin dry, the memory of the day's labor lingering like a faint scent of pine resin. The faint glow of phosphorus is both a blessing and a hidden danger in your daily life. White phosphorus, the key ingredient in early matches, has a curious, almost magical quality. It glows softly in the dark, emitting a ghostly light that seems to dance just out of reach. You might have noticed this eerie glow on the tips of matches or even on your fingertips after hours of work, like carrying a secret little fire that never quite goes out. But here's the catch. This beautiful light comes with a cost, and the dangers were not immediately obvious. You've heard the whispered stories among the girls about strange pains in the jaws or swelling of the gums, conditions the doctors call phossy jaw. It's a slow, quiet ailment caused by prolonged exposure to white phosphorus vapors, painful but rarely talked about in full. The invisible poison seeps into bones, causing decay, discomfort, and sometimes disfigurement. Yet because the symptoms take time to develop and the connection to factory work was not well understood for years, many continued without proper protection. Historians still argue whether early factory owners fully grasped the health risks or chose to ignore them in the race for profit. Some evidence suggests that warnings were downplayed to avoid costly changes, while others claim that industrial knowledge was simply too limited to prevent the damage. One lesser-known fact: some matchstick girls tried home remedies passed down from neighbors, applying mixtures of herbs or even using crocodile dung as a poultice, believing it would heal or soothe their aches. Yes, that's a real one. Ancient remedies sometimes find their way into the most unlikely places. The use of white phosphorus was widespread because it ignited easily with a simple strike, making matches a convenient, if risky, product. The chemical itself was a marvel of the time, extracted through a complex process from phosphate rock. But working with it day after day meant constant low-level poisoning, a hidden cloud that hung over factories. You might imagine the girls exchanging hushed warnings about the smell of the vapors, or how to keep fingers from glowing too brightly in the dark, a spectral badge of their dangerous labor. Yet the atmosphere inside the factories remained oppressive, not just physically but emotionally, as health fears and exhaustion mingled quietly beneath the surface. The slow rise of safety reforms and the switch to red phosphorus, less toxic and safer to handle, came only after decades of silent suffering. For now, you carry on with the work, fingertips glowing faintly, each spark a reminder of the fragile balance between light and shadow in your world. The art of making matches is far more delicate than you might imagine. You'd think it's as simple as dipping sticks in a chemical bath and letting them dry, but the early matchstick factories were a hive of precise, careful movements and a surprisingly complex series of steps. Your fingers move almost automatically, yet every motion has its place in the chain of production, a quiet dance that keeps the whole factory humming. First, the wood itself must be prepared. Thin wooden splints, typically made from poplar or aspen, are cut to uniform lengths and smoothed by hand or machine. The girls in the factory often joke about the matchstick army, stacks of tiny soldiers lined up and ready for their moment of ignition. Each stick needs to be just the right size. Too thick, and it won't burn properly. Too thin, and it might snap in your fingers. Next, the dipping process begins. You carefully dip each stick's head into a mixture containing white phosphorus, sulfur, and other chemicals designed to ignite on contact with a rough surface. The precision is crucial. Too much chemical, and the matches might ignite prematurely or be dangerously unstable. Too little, and they won't light at all. You can almost feel the tension in the air as the sticks are lowered into the baths. One wrong move, and the whole batch could be ruined. Once dipped, the matches must be dried. Long rows of wooden racks stand near stoves or open windows, where the sticks rest quietly, letting the chemicals settle and dry. You sometimes catch the faint scent of sulfur in the air, mixed with the pine wood's freshness. It's oddly calming, like the smell of a campfire before it fully ignites. After drying, matches are sorted. Broken or malformed sticks are set aside, sometimes salvaged if possible, but often discarded. Then comes the packaging, neatly aligning the matches into small boxes, folding the striking surfaces onto each box and sealing them carefully. Your hands work quickly but gently, mindful not to damage the delicate heads. Historians still argue whether mechanization truly improved match production or simply replaced one set of risks with another. Early machines sped up production but often introduced new hazards, including accidents and less attention to individual safety. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some factories had a tradition of naming their match batches with playful titles like Sunbeam Specials or Whispering Woods, giving a hint of personality to an otherwise monotonous task. You realize, as your fingers move through the motions, that making matches is more than just work. It's a careful balance of chemistry, craftsmanship, and quiet endurance. Each tiny match you help create is a small miracle of industry, destined to light 1,000 quiet moments. Victorian society held a rather complicated view of girls working in factories, especially the young matchstick girls you've come to know. On one hand, these girls were often seen as symbols of industriousness and virtue, examples of poor but hardworking children contributing to their families. On the other hand, their presence in factories raised eyebrows and sometimes outright disapproval, particularly among the middle and upper classes who idealized childhood innocence and the sanctity of the home. You might overhear conversations in the street about the delicate condition of young girls laboring long hours, or about the moral dangers lurking in industrial towns. Factory work was often portrayed as a necessary evil, a way for poor families to survive, but not an ideal path for young women. Many believed that the repetitive labor and exposure to chemicals could spoil a girl's health and temperament, perhaps even her future as a wife and mother. Historians still argue whether this social attitude was driven more by genuine concern or by the Victorian desire to control working-class behavior and maintain social order. Some suggest it was a mix of both, with layers of protectionism intertwined with class prejudice. One curious detail: literature and newspapers of the time sometimes described matchstick girls in almost fairy tale terms, fragile, glowing creatures who worked quietly, yet had an almost otherworldly glow from the phosphorus on their fingertips. This poetic imagery was a gentle mask over harsher realities. In everyday life, many families relied heavily on the wages these girls brought home, and society's ambivalence created a delicate tension. While some reformers campaigned to reduce child labor and improve factory conditions, others dismissed such efforts as interfering with family survival. It's fascinating to note that some matchstick girls themselves embraced their role proudly, despite the challenges. They found identity and camaraderie in their work, sharing jokes and stories that softened the factory's harsh edges. As you imagine this complex social landscape, it's clear that the matchstick girls occupied a unique space, both cherished and marginalized, industrious and vulnerable. Their lives were a mirror reflecting the hopes and contradictions of an age caught between tradition and industrial modernity. The factories where you and your fellow matchstick girls work are more than just places of labor. They are small, self-contained worlds with their own rhythms, sounds, and smells. Each factory feels like a quiet village of its own, where the clink of wooden sticks, the soft murmur of voices, and the occasional laughter form a strange kind of music. The factory's architecture is simple but functional. High ceilings to help with ventilation, tall windows that let in muted daylight, and long rows of benches where you sit side by side with dozens of other girls. The wooden floors creak beneath your feet, and the walls seem to hold the memory of every whispered conversation and every sigh. One interesting detail is how factories dealt with the inevitable buildup of dust and chemical fumes. Some factories installed basic ventilation systems, open windows, vents, or fans, though these were often insufficient. You learn to lean away from the densest clouds of white phosphorus vapor, holding your breath when you can. Historians still argue whether factory owners prioritized worker health or simply did the minimum to keep production running. Some factories introduced rudimentary safety measures only after public outcry or government inspections, while others resisted change, fearing increased costs. The daily routine inside the factory is punctuated by short breaks, when you and your friends huddle together in a small, cramped rest area. Here, stories are exchanged, snacks are shared, and the harshness of the workday briefly fades. During these moments, you might overhear a girl reading aloud from a borrowed book or quietly humming a tune to ease the ache in her hands. Interestingly, some factories maintained informal beauty contests among the workers, where the best dipped matchstick was celebrated. It sounds odd, but this small competition sparked pride and camaraderie, giving a playful spark to otherwise monotonous labor. The ambient sounds of the factory, the gentle tapping of sticks, the soft rustle of paper, the low murmur of voices, create a surprisingly calming backdrop, like a lullaby woven from industry and human connection. As you settle into this rhythm, the world outside the factory gates seems to slow, and the day's worries grow distant. The factory is not just a place of work. It is a gentle hum of life, resilience, and quiet hope, echoing softly in the lives of those who pass through its doors. Lunch breaks in the matchstick factories offer a brief escape from the hum of machinery and the smell of chemicals. And though the time is short, it's a cherished moment. You find yourself sitting on a wooden bench with your friends, unpacking a small meal brought from home, perhaps a crust of bread, a chunk of cheese, or a modest helping of porridge, all wrapped in faded cloth or old newspaper. Food during the Industrial Revolution, especially for working-class children, was simple and often repetitive. You learn to savor each bite as if it were a rare treat. Sometimes the factory's proximity to bustling markets means you can sneak a sweet pastry or a piece of fruit, but these luxuries are few and far between. Historians still debate the nutritional quality of diets among industrial workers, but most agree that many suffered from deficiencies that left them tired and vulnerable to illness. Your energy during the long shifts depends as much on these humble meals as on sheer willpower. There's a quirky tradition among matchstick girls, swapping food from their lunch pails, a quiet game of chance that sometimes leads to unexpected discoveries, a salty pickle here, a bit of jam there, a shared smile over the surprise taste. This small ritual brings lightness to the hard day. Outside the factory windows, you sometimes glimpse scenes of city life, vendors hawking their wares, horses clattering by, children playing in the muddy streets. It's a world both near and far, a contrast to the close quarters where you work. After lunch, you settle back into your routine, the warmth of the meal lingering just long enough to bolster your spirits. The day stretches ahead, but you carry with you the small comforts and the gentle hope that tomorrow might bring something a little kinder. In these quiet moments, it's easy to forget the dangers lurking in the fumes or the exhaustion waiting at day's end. For now, you rest, surrounded by the soft murmur of friendship and the rhythmic tap of matches. The industrial city itself is a maze of narrow streets, smoky skies, and constant motion. As you leave the factory at day's end, the air feels heavy with soot and coal dust, a thick cloak settling over the cobblestones. Gas lamps flicker faintly along the alleys, their soft glow struggling against the encroaching dusk. Your feet drag through puddles of rain mixed with grime, the clatter of horseshoes and cartwheels echoing nearby. Around you, shopkeepers close up their stalls, and tired children play tag beneath flickering streetlights. The contrast between the factory's interior quiet and the bustling street outside is striking, almost like stepping between two worlds. Historians still argue whether the rapid urban growth of this era improved or worsened living conditions overall, but no one disputes the challenges of overcrowding, poor sanitation, and disease. One unusual fact: in some industrial neighborhoods, people used to decorate their windowsills with small plants and flowers, tiny rebellions of green in the gray cityscape. These bits of nature were both a comfort and a statement of hope amid the grime. Your journey home takes you past taverns filled with low murmur and laughter, the scent of ale mingling with coal smoke. Street vendors call out their wares: hot pies, roasted chestnuts, and sometimes sweetmeats, temptations for the weary worker. Despite the city's hardships, there's a strange warmth here. Neighbors nod and smile, children chase each other through alleys, and musicians sometimes play quiet tunes to lighten the evening air. It's a patchwork of hardship and resilience, shadow and light. As you cross the threshold into your home, the familiar smells of stew or bread welcome you back. The day's exhaustion settles into your bones, but so does the comforting rhythm of daily life. The quiet promise of rest, of another dawn to come. You curl up, perhaps humming a tune learned from the factory, letting the city's soft hum fade into peaceful silence. As evening deepens, your thoughts drift toward the quiet dangers that lurk beneath the surface of matchstick work. The white phosphorus that clings invisibly to your fingers. The chemical's slow, silent invasion of your body. It's a strange companion, deadly but unseen, whispered about in hushed tones among workers but rarely acknowledged openly. White phosphorus, you learn, is so toxic that prolonged exposure can cause a condition called phossy jaw, a slow decay of the jawbone accompanied by swelling and pain. Thankfully, the worst cases are becoming less common as factories start to take precautions, but the threat remains a shadow over your daily labor. Historians still argue whether industrial reforms came too late or just in time to save many from this grim fate. Some say the early warnings were ignored for profit's sake, while others note the gradual improvements in safety laws. A quirky aside, some matchstick girls developed unique ways to hide the glowing phosphorus stains on their fingertips, using powders, chalk, or even makeup, a secret badge of survival, if you will. You might remember the stories whispered at night, tales of girls whose hands glowed faintly in the dark, like tiny lanterns guiding them through long evenings. It's both eerie and oddly poetic. Despite the dangers, the work continues because it must. Each match you help make holds the promise of a tiny flame, a spark of warmth and light for someone else's hearth. There's a quiet dignity in that, even if it's hard to hold on to on the darkest days. As you rest your hands, now free from the day's work, you feel the weight of both danger and purpose, an uneasy balance in the twilight hours. The story of the Matchstick Girls is not just one of hardship, but also of surprising resilience and unexpected moments of joy. Amid the clatter and chemical haze of the factories, friendships form, quiet alliances against the daily grind. You find comfort in shared smiles, whispered jokes, and the occasional stolen moment of playfulness that softens the monotony. Sometimes, on rare afternoons, factory owners allow music or storytelling during breaks. A fiddler might squeeze into the cramped rest area, coaxing out lilting tunes that lift weary spirits. You hum along, the notes weaving a gentle spell that seems to lighten both the air and your heart. Historians still debate how much these small acts of kindness impacted worker morale, but everyone agrees that a moment of laughter or music can make even the hardest workday a little more bearable. Interestingly, Matchstick Girls developed their own subtle language of glances and gestures, a kind of secret code that helped them navigate both work and social life. A tilt of the head, a quick wink, or a shared sigh conveyed more than words ever could. You realize that these moments of connection are as essential as the work itself, weaving a fragile thread of humanity through the industrial landscape. There's a charming oddity, too. Some Matchstick Girls took to decorating their boxes with tiny drawings or slogans, turning their product into a canvas for personal expression, a quiet rebellion against uniformity. As the day ends, you feel the strength drawn not just from the work, but from these small sparks of life and laughter shared with friends. They are the light in the shadows, the gentle warmth that keeps you going. The world outside the factory doors often seems like a different planet compared to the one you inhabit inside. As the Matchstick Girls trudge home through thickening fog or biting winter chill, the city's noises take on a softer, more distant quality, like a dream fading in the twilight. Street vendors pack up their carts, and gas lamps sputter in the damp air, casting a gentle amber glow. You pull your shawl tighter, feeling the day's dust and phosphorus lingering on your skin, a silent reminder of the factory's unseen grip. Historians still argue whether the industrial city's harsh environment inevitably shaped the health and destinies of its inhabitants, or if resilience and community softened the blow. Evidence suggests a complicated mix of both. One quaint detail from this time: in some neighborhoods, children collected scraps of phosphorus to make tiny ghost lights that glowed faintly at night. A playful, if slightly eerie game inspired by the very substance that caused so much trouble in the factories. At home, families often gathered around the hearth, sharing simple meals and stories. The contrast between the factory's mechanical world and the warmth of home created a strange duality in your daily life, one that shaped your sense of belonging and hope. Sometimes a neighbor might stop by with news or a treat, weaving a delicate thread of connection in the cold industrial fabric. These moments, though brief, helped stitch together a community bound by shared struggle and quiet perseverance. As you prepare for bed, the city sounds dim into a soft hum, distant footsteps, a dog barking, the rustle of curtains in the night breeze. You breathe deeply, feeling the day's fatigue settle into calm, readying you for another day in this world of flickering lights and whispered hopes. Night falls fully now, wrapping the industrial city in a velvety hush broken only by the occasional clang of distant machinery or the soft murmur of night watchmen making their rounds. You lie awake for a moment, feeling the residual aches in your hands and feet, the lingering taste of dust on your tongue. Sleep is a precious commodity for matchstick girls, often stolen in short bursts between long shifts or after grueling days. You learn to cherish the quiet moments of rest, where your mind drifts away from the clatter of the factory and into softer realms of dreams and memory. Historians still debate how much sleep deprivation impacted the health and longevity of industrial workers, but it's clear that exhaustion was a constant companion. Your body aches for relief, yet your mind often buzzes with worries and plans. There's a curious custom among some workers of keeping small charms or trinkets tucked under pillows, a smooth stone, a pressed flower, or a faded ribbon. These tokens offer comfort and a whisper of protection, little anchors in an unpredictable world. You recall a tale of a girl who claimed her charm. A tiny carved wooden matchstick glowed faintly in the dark, guiding her safely through sleepless nights. Whether true or fanciful, stories like this ease the mind and lull you gently toward rest. As you finally drift off, the city outside continues its endless rhythm. The hum of distant trains, the soft crackle of gas lamps, the occasional call of a night bird. It's a lullaby woven from industry and life, a gentle reminder that tomorrow brings a new day, with new challenges and new moments of unexpected beauty. You breathe deeply, sinking into the comfort of your bed, the fragile boundary between wakefulness and dreams softening like the glow of a matchstick's flame. Morning arrives quietly, with a pale gray light filtering through smudged windows. You awaken to the distant clatter of carts and the faint whistle of factory horns, signaling the start of another day. Your muscles protest softly as you rise, but there's a familiar rhythm to the routine, comforting in its predictability. Preparing for work means layering coarse fabrics and wrapping scarves tight against the chill. The streets outside are damp and slick, and the air carries a mix of coal smoke, wet earth, and the faintest hint of wood smoke from neighborhood hearths. Historians still argue how much urban pollution affected respiratory health during the Industrial Revolution, but it's undeniable that the city's atmosphere was a harsh one to breathe. On the way to the factory, you pass small shops selling remedies and tonics, their shelves crowded with curious bottles promising to cure everything from coughs to insomnia. Folk medicine blends with early industrial science, creating a strange cocktail of hope and skepticism. A quirky bit. Some workers swore by snuff powders infused with mint or lavender to clear their heads during long shifts, a kind of early aromatherapy that brought a momentary lift amidst the grime. Entering the factory once more, you notice the subtle changes. New safety posters pinned to the walls, a different foreman's nod, or the quiet buzz of an experimental ventilation system. Progress inches forward, even here. You settle back into the steady work, the scratch and snap of matches filling the air, a sound both monotonous and strangely soothing, like the heartbeat of this industrial world. The Matchstick Girls' lives intersect with wider social changes rippling through the Industrial Revolution. Labor movements gaining traction, voices calling for fairer wages, and the earliest whispers of women's rights. You hear the rumors, the cautious hopes exchanged in hushed conversations during breaks or evenings by the fireside. Petitions circulate, and meetings are held in cramped rooms, where passionate speeches mix with determined whispers. The idea that workers could shape their own destinies seems revolutionary, almost as bright as the matches you produce. Historians still debate the exact impact of early labor activism on the daily lives of child workers, but it's clear that these efforts sowed seeds for future reforms. A charming fact, some Matchstick Girls secretly created their own clubs or reading circles, sharing books and poems borrowed from sympathetic adults, a quiet rebellion against the limits imposed on them. You might smile imagining these young women trading tales and ideas, their minds alight with dreams beyond factory walls. Outside the factory, the city continues to pulse with change. New inventions, from electric lighting to improved transportation, promise a future vastly different from today's shadows and soot. Yet for now, your world remains grounded in the delicate balance of labor and hope, danger and resilience, a flickering flame refusing to be extinguished. You tuck away these thoughts as you return home, the faint scent of matches still lingering on your fingers, a reminder of both the past and the promise ahead. As the industrial age edges toward its modern form, you witness subtle shifts in the rhythm of daily life, the gradual replacement of worn tools, the quiet introduction of machines that promise to ease labor but also bring uncertainty. The factory hums with a different tone now, blending old routines with new possibilities. You feel the weight of change in the air, a mixture of hope and nostalgia. The world outside is growing faster, brighter, and louder, yet the memory of those early smoky days lingers, a reminder of the delicate balance between progress and the human cost.